Hi guys, this is Jonathan Lambert with the Mathematics Development and Support Service at the National College of Ireland. And this short video, another video in our series of videos dealing with logic and propositional logic, is I suppose, let's say, expanding on propositional logic to introduce the concept of propositional functions, or more importantly what are known as predicates or predicate functions or predicate statements, and that's what this video is going to concentrate on. But let's just recall what a proposition is. So we know, just recall. We have that a proposition is a statement that is either true or false, that is either true or false. Okay, and some examples of propositions would be, let's say, the proposition P, and the proposition P represents something like 4 is an integer. Okay, so this particular proposition is actually true because 4 is an integer. We could do another proposition, let's call it Q, and we could say something like 0.5 is an integer. Okay, and we know that 0.5 is not an integer. Okay, so this particular proposition is actually false. We could say something like maybe Q, let's say, or we could say that, let's say, 4 is bigger than 3. Okay, from a propositional perspective, this proposition is actually true. We could say Q, or let's say the proposition S is something like, let's say, 4 divided by 2 is rational. Okay, so that particular proposition of 4 over 2 is a fraction. Okay, so 4 divided by 2 is certainly a rational number, so this proposition is also true. Q or S, let's say T, we could have another proposition that might be something like, let's say 7 is a prime number. Okay, so 7 is a prime, and the only divisors of 7 are 7 and are itself and 1, and by definition 7 is a prime. So this particular proposition is true. I suppose the important point that I'm trying to make here is this, is that the thing that's been tested, you can actually see here, we're actually testing whether the number 4 is an integer, whether the number 0.5 is an integer. Okay, we're testing numbers. Like here, we're testing to see whether this number is bigger than this particular number here. We're testing whether this number divided by this number is rational, whether this number is prime. Okay, we could effectively change these numbers to be any numbers. Okay, and what we would be able to do then is we'd be able to evaluate the propositions. Okay, but what we're really interested in is that we're really interested in okay, if I was to change this to be any number, well, let's not just say any number, let's say a number that comes from a particular domain. Okay, so let's say a number that comes from a particular domain. Okay, so here's our domain. Okay, this is going to be called the domain of discourse. Okay, so there's objects in this particular domain, the domain of discourse. Okay, this is the objects that we're talking about. Okay, so what a predicate function is, a predicate function is like, it's like a proposition. Okay, but it allows us to change. It allows us to change the value that we're actually considering. So instead of the proposition P, which represents 4 as an integer, okay, we could talk about a predicate function, okay, that takes any integer, okay, okay, under this particular calculus, okay, and maps that them integers, okay, to either the values true or false, if that makes sense. So for example, we could change this to be P of X. Okay, P of X is a propositional function. It takes an input. Okay, the input X is taken from some particular domain. Let's say, for argument's sake, that domain is from the set of integers. Okay, and what P of X does is P of X, I suppose, let's say, P of X then assigns a truth value, okay, based off the evaluation of the proposition, okay, with X instead of 4. So based off the evaluation of the proposition, X is an integer. Okay, So this particular statement is either true or false, but it depends upon the actual value that we're considering. Okay? So what predicates allow us to do is to allow us to consider a whole domain, okay, the domain of discourse, okay, and the predicate function itself, okay, when passed a particular object from that particular domain of discourse, okay, will actually assign a truth value to that particular object, or to the proposition that's created when the object when the variable is replaced by the object. Okay. So we could have something like, if the domain of discourse is the integers, we could have now a propositional function that looks like this. It's called p of x, and p of x, when we go to